Some of your corners said they didn't even bother really to go back and look at the week one because you guys are doing things so differently now. Does that game just not have any relevance to the way you're playing now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I do think it was, it was in an NFL football season. It was a long time ago. But, we studied it and we looked at it. And of course, there's things that they did that they still do, so of course we look at those things. So, but, you live and learn from every experience, and that's definitely one we learn from, and on to the next one.
When you have a game plan that doesn't accomplish the goal and the guy that you want to limit has almost 200 yards, do you just scrap it and do something else, or do you try to take elements of that you felt did work? How do you approach that second game?
Well, no, I think it's, we're always going to look at, I think there's things that we can, there's technique things that we can do a little bit better. There's subtle tweaks. Of course, there's also, every game plan's unique. There's some things that we're like, well, that didn't work the way we thought it was, and you completely scrap it. But, there was a lot of, especially in the second half of that game, there was a lot of good in that game. I thought, especially going back, and that's always one of the first things I know I do individually is, you go back and you study the last time you play a team, whether it was 5 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, or last year. So, there were still a lot of good things from that game, but then also some things that we had to clean up.
When you look back on the tape, Devontae was his most highest snap count of the season. Look back on tape, how do you feel he performed after Dean went down?
Well, you talking specifically last week?
Yes.
Yeah, Dean got hurt, I think, the 7th or 8th play. But we've been getting, DY, he's gotten more and more reps, every week, especially the last 4 or 5 weeks. And he's, he's earned that because of the way he's worked and he's improved. So it was exciting to see him kind of coming on. Obviously, with Dean's loss now, when you lose a veteran like that, you're going to expect, DY's role is going to increase even more. Same thing with TJ. So, but it's been good to see DY grow.
What's the biggest growth you've seen in him from the start of the season to now, from what you've noticed in the practice field?
I think every single rookie is different. Some guys in and some guys come in, and it happens a lot faster and a lot easier for them. Most often, most of the time, that's not the case. It's a process, and the thing that I think he's done a great job with is he's such a diligent worker. He really works at it, and the way he plays the game, at least once he gets out on the grass, is he plays his tail off. He plays with unbelievable effort. So I think that's the thing I know me personally, because a lot of times as a player, when you're not getting it, the first thing is that you go in the tank and you don't give that effort. DY's really done a great job from day one, just busting his butt, and he's done a great job with Jerry in the classroom, and he's just continued to stay with it and work and grind and improve, and it's shown in his play now, which is great to see.
Joe, 3 picks in a row in Miami. Something that Coach LaFleur said, I think, after the game on Monday was the focus was more on what the quarterback is doing, not so much the concern about the speed of Hill and Waddle. Can you explain what your guys were able to do to adjust to come up with that stuff in the second half?
I think it's I think there's bits and pieces of that I agree with, but you gotta when you play against one wideout, an elite wideout is one thing, but when they have 2 of them, it almost takes, because again, you practice all week, you prepare all week, but man, until you get out there and it's like, whoa, wow, we talked about how fast 17 and 10 are, but wow, they are really, really different. And until you get in the game and you get going, and unfortunately, it took us about 17 or 18 plays to be like, okay, these guys are real. And when you play against great wideouts, whether it's one or a team that has two of them, you know, they're gonna get their catches. They're gonna make some plays. You know, our big thing that we talked about all week, and I even mentioned it, you know, I mention it every week, is you just can't, you know, you want to limit and give up, and don't give up the big one, the explosion, you know. And, you know, that's what happened, you know, twice within the first 18 plays of the game. We gave up a 50-yarder where 10 just ran by us. And we gave up the 80-yarder where, you know, we missed, you know, a handful of tackles, lost leverage. And against great guys like that, you know, all they need is an inch. So, but I think, you know, I think we really, once those two plays happened, it was like, wow, this is real. And our guys settled in and they played really well, you know, especially the second half.
Is that the best you guys have communicated on the back end, maybe all season, to keep the top on like
Yeah.
that? And why do you think that finally clicked? I know you guys have been searching for that.
Well, you know, I think it was, you know, I wanna answer your question, but also I wanna give praise to, you know, I think, you know, Darnell Savage came in the second half, and I really think he did a great job, just overall game, you know. I think he played well, he played fast, he played physical. I think the communication aspect was really clicking with them. So I think that had a lot to do with it. But yeah, they did. And again, kind of back to what I was referring to in a game like that, or you know, when you play against an elite wideout or two, like in Miami, you can't get frustrated if, you know, they're, like I said, they're going to get a, you know, an 18 or a 22-yard catch. You know, hey, let's get them down. Let's go on to the next play. You can't get frustrated with that. And they still made a couple plays in the second half. We just, you know, when and if they did catch the ball, we got them down. And I think that's the big thing when you play against, you know, an explosive type of player that, you know, legitimately can take it to the house anytime he touches the ball. I think that was big.
It was a rough few weeks for Darnell before Sunday, obviously having
Yeah.
him sit a little bit. What did you see change in him to come back the way that he did, in his game specifically?
He was just, you know, he was resilient. He came in here every day, and, you know, I think anytime, any player, when they go through something like that, they're not happy, you know, but you can't let it affect, you know, you got to be a pro. And he really did. He did an unbelievable job with that. Just, you know, probably resilient was the best word I can use, is that he came in here every day and he didn't like it, but he grinded through it and worked and, you know, kept allowing Coach Gray and Coach Downert to coach him. And he did a great job, you know. So I'm happy for him, because those aren't easy situations to go through, and he did a heck of a job.
What's the key against Jefferson? And I ask it this way because, I mean, he's chewed up everybody's play. I mean, Belichick's Patriots, he's destroyed the last 3 games. He's gone crazy.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen for you to come off the field feeling good about it?
Well, I think the big thing is the same thing that you say every week. You know, great players are gonna, you know, they're gonna make their share of plays. It's gonna happen. You know, you're not gonna shut the guy out. It's not gonna happen. But the big thing is that, again, no different than any week, you can't give up the huge play, the massive play, the what we refer to as an explosion play. And I think that's the key thing, is that when and if the guy does have a catch, it does have a decent gain, you can't allow it to get you out of whack and you know, ruin the day. And, you know, because they have some other guys too. You know, Hawkinson's come in and been a great addition to them. Obviously, they have an elite back. You know, so I think in those situations when a guy does make a play, you got to limit it to, hey, if he gets a catch, let's get him down, let's move on to the next play. Let's just not let, you know, one catch, you know, miss a tackle or bust a coverage, and then it turns into a disaster. I think that's the biggest thing that you got to do when you play against an elite receiver like that.
You know, you had 220 yards against Detroit, and they still won.
Yeah.
Is that what sort of you're referring to? Like, I mean, there were some big plays in that game. But
Oh, sure. No, I think that was just, Detroit just outscored them, but, no, Kirk and 18 had a massive game that game, but, I would like to, of course I want to win the game, but I would like to win the game and not give up over 200 yards receiving to one guy. But I think the one thing that, you brought it up, I wasn't alluding to that, but I thought Detroit did do a great job is that they just kept playing. They kept playing. Obviously, offense did a great job for them. But they didn't let all those catches and all those yards get them out of whack. They just kept playing. They made the plays that they needed to. And then the offense obviously bailed them out, and they were able to win the game.
Hey, Joe, I know it hasn't been perfect with what the Dolphins were able to do on a couple of big plays in the Bears a couple weeks ago, but it does seem like you guys in the back end are in such a better place than the first time you played these guys. I'm just curious, how did you go about, those guys kind of expressed some frustration with the approach you guys took in the first game, and how did you go from there to being where you are now? Because I'm guessing that as a coach, you wanted to listen and you gave those guys a chance to talk, but how did you get there? Because it could be the difference between where the season could have gone and where it could go in a positive way now.
I think the number one thing that you guys, we all got to realize you're talking about, an NFL football player, an NFL athlete, a professional athlete we're all competitive in this room. We all want to be good and be great and do great things, but those guys, what they do, you're talking about the elite of the elite, and because they are, the reason they're in the position they're in is because they are insane competitors, and in everything that they do. And I think the first game, the beginning of the season, when you don't win that first game, they're like, oh my God, So I've always taken the approach as a coach that, you got the wrong guys. If things don't go well and you lose and they're okay with it, those aren't the type of guys that you want. So, now then I think it's the job of the coach to say, okay, let's relax. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Let's go back to the drawing board and let's go back to the practice field and let's just keep chopping wood and keep grinding. And that's the type of guys that we have, and we have great guys because they do want to win. They're pissed off when we don't win, but they come back every week and grind through it and move on to the next opponent. And that's it just goes to show you we got a great room, a great locker room of guys.
So you don't change your scheme, but you listen to their input and then you kind of meld it into what you would normally do.
You can't just say, oh, well, this playbook doesn't work, let's throw this out. You can't do that. Now I think you got to subtly, tweak some things, and every single game plan has some subtle things that you do specifically for that team. But no, you do what you do. You believe in the process. You believe in what you do, and you just go back to work. And our guys have done that every single week this year, and it's been great.
We asked you about game plan from week one to now, but a pretty big difference in that Vikings offense is having a tight end like Hawkinson.
Sure.
How does that change the way that you defend this offense to have?
Yeah, it's another wrinkle for them. They did have Herb Smith, and I think them going out and getting Hawkinson was a big part of them going to get him, was that Herb was on IR. So they have a good scheme. I got a ton of respect for Kevin O'Connell. I was with Kirk in Washington for 3 years. Got a ton of respect for him. But we look at every week. It's about what we do. We got to go out and execute, and doesn't matter what the situation is, doesn't matter what the call is, doesn't matter what they do. It's about how we go execute the call, how we communicate, how whoever has the ball in their hand, we go tackle, and the things that we can control, and we can control those things.